Oh dear. Oh dear. I suppose it had to come to this. I had to talk about this particular Spider-Man film in the 8 live-action film series. Um, just to sort of before I start talking about my thoughts on Spider-Man: Far From Home, I went to a different cinema for this occasion. Usually, I would go to the Showcase Cinema in Nangaru, but I ended up going to City World in City Centre in Cardiff, which is fine. I mean, there's more times at Cineworld compared to Showcase, which is interesting. So I went to the 1:15 performance, and as I was coming out of the cinema, a couple of kids were coming in, and they were asking what films being shown, and I told them Spider-Man: Far From Home, and they seemed disappointed because I think they were hoping to see it, and I told them that there was another one at 4:20, so they were thankful that I told them that. So yeah, I'm glad I made someone's day with that. So I'm glad I was helpful. So yeah, yes, I've seen the extended cut of Spider-Man: Far From Home. This is the extended cut, not the theatrical cut that I saw at the cinema and which I've seen on DVD and Blu-ray over the years. And it's interesting. Because of course, I saw this film back in 2019, twice at the cinema, and I've seen it more times on Blu-ray since it came out. Yeah, in terms of it being different, the extended cut, I mean, I can't. There's not really much difference between the theatrical cut and the extended cut when watching the film on the big screen recently. Although they did include the Peter's to-do list scenes, which were on the Blu-ray release, so that was as a special feature, and I'm glad they put those scenes in because at least it sort of because it was like it just I think the film felt incomplete without those sequences, and it was nice to see it on the big screen compared to seeing it on the small screen on Blu-ray, and yeah, and I think there was an extra scene featuring Quentin Beckett's Mysterio teaching some extras how to perform during the London attack scene, which was like in the second half of the film. That's about it as far as I'm concerned regarding the extended cut. There might have been some extra bits added into certain scenes that I wasn't aware of when I was watching the extended cut, but yeah, that's about it really. I can't really say the extended cut of Spider-Man: Far From Home was anything worthy of mention apart from the extra to-do list scenes and the Mysterio teaching the London extras scene. Seeing the extended cut of Spider-Man: Far From Home has been interesting because over the years I've grown to appreciate it a little bit more as a film compared to when I first saw it on the big screen and how I've reviewed, and compared to when I reviewed it on my blog twice over. And I think, yeah, so yeah, I mean, I think there are things about Spider-Man: Far From Home that are kind of essential for the film to have. With that said, I still don't regard Spider-Man: Far From Home very highly compared to others. Many people would regard Spider-Man 3 and The Amazing Spider-Man 2 as the weakest entries in the Spider-Man live-action film series. For me, it's Far From Home that I consider to be the weakest out of the lot of films. Now, if you love Far From Home, then that's fine. You are entitled to enjoy the film. I can't really take to it because there are lots of things that don't work for me when watching the film from beginning to end. This is particularly when you're sort of considering the fact that Spider-Man: Far From Home follows on from the two Avengers films that take place between Spider-Man: Homecoming and Spider-Man: Far From Home. So you have Avengers: Infinity War and Avengers: Endgame to consider in terms of the build-up to Far From Home. And of course the fact that it relies on you to know that Tony Stark was killed off in Avengers: Endgame was something that was kind of like an important plot element. And I think, like Spider-Man: Homecoming, you could be forgiven for being confused as to what's going on when seeing Spider-Man: Far From Home for the first time. I mean, if you're sort of going from Homecoming into Far From Home, you might be a bit confused as to what happened in between the two movies, and you would have to be told. I mean, fortunately, the memorandum segment at the beginning of the film gives you a picture as to what happened, but still, I don't really know if that makes the film experience any better compared to. You see, this is a problem I have with Spider-Man: Far From Home. If the film was about Peter overcoming his grief over Tony Stark's death, then that would be fine. I would have gone with that. I would have been okay with the whole approach to the fact that it's a film where Peter is trying to recover from his grief, because you know there's some really good scenes depicting that, and particularly between Peter and Happy Hogan in these film's second half, where Peter is still is struggling to live up to people's expectations of him being the next Iron Man, which I don't really, which kind of links to another issue I have, because Spider-Man should not be Iron Man, he should be Spider-Man. But then again, this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and things are done differently in there. So this is not how. This is not the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield era now. This is the Tom Holland era, and things are done differently in how the MCU handles Spider-Man. But as I said, if the film went with that approach of taking the story seriously, with Peter overcoming his grief regarding Tony Stark, then I would have been on board with that. However, the film features a lot of stupid moments throughout the film, particularly when Peter's on the school trip around Europe with his teachers and with his fellow classmates, and this is another issue concerning the because the supporting cast, a lot of the supporting guest cast are played for laughs in some respects. I mean, the teachers who are looking after the kids, they're the worst of as far as I'm concerned, because they say lots of stupid things when looking after the kids, and it's like they can't. I mean, even one of them says, "I'm not qualified to do this." Quite to do something. I think something about I think it's counselling or something. I think one of the teachers says, "I'm not qualified to be the to do it," which makes me wonder, why are you even a teacher? And also another teacher says, as a man of science, I believe there's only one explanation for what's happening: witches. And I'm like, what? I mean, this is a kind of an argument I carried over from the Spider-Man Homecoming review that I did last week, because the first two MCU films are played more as semi-comedies, and that's particularly true in the sense of the guest cast, and I don't, and also there's this business with Ned Leeds having a relationship with Betty Brant, which I would have been okay with if it wasn't played for laughs in that respect either, and it's not helped by the fact that they broke up by the end, which kind of annoys me a little bit, because if they were going to play with that idea, surely they would have done it in a more dramatic and serious way. So yeah, and a scene that really bothers me, particularly in the when we watching the film again on the big screen, is the scene where Peter is asked to try out the night monkey suit by that Russian woman. I think she was Russian. Because when they stop for a break on their way to Prague, because the first thing she says to him is, "Take your clothes off," and I'm like, why can't he do it? Why can't he dress up in a changing room? I mean, the writing just doesn't seem to. The writing process doesn't seem to take common sense into the account. Like, because Peter would actually find this a bit embarrassing. Wouldn't he be going somewhere? Wouldn't he go somewhere more private to put the suit on? Because I mean, if he did that, then that whole business with Brad taking the photo of him to show to Michelle wouldn't have happened. That scene wouldn't have happened. And also the scene where Peter asks the Edith glasses to make a target place Brad as a target, inadvertently causing the missile attack on the bus. Which, yeah, it's just there's so many silly moments for me. I mean, a lot of the things, it's like a chain reaction of silly moments that go from one point to the next, and I just feel like saying the line from the Doctor Who story Warriors of the Deep that Peter Davison says, there should have been another way, to how the writing of that story could have turned out. And I get that it was all done to play for comedy, and also to give the fact that Peter Parker was making mistakes, because, you know, he's a teenager who, you know, who has to sort of learn from his errors, which honestly that would have been okay if the writing itself was better handled in the execution of the film. But as is, it just comes across as being really badly thought out, and I really don't like how it seems to take on this comedic approach, which I would have preferred a balance of the comedy and drama throughout. And and there are moments in the film which have balances of that, but I don't think it's evened out in the final product. The thing that really gets me about Spider-Man Far From Home, which is part of the scene that I really hate, and it's when Peter Parker gives Quentin Beck the glasses, the Edith glasses, to Quentin Beck. Peter gives the glasses that Tony Stark gave him to Quentin Beck, and it really that scene really does annoy me, because Peter is basing the assumption that Quentin Beck is a hero from knowing him for only like a couple of days, and you know, and again, I get that it's to sort of illustrate that Peter isn't as you know, he's a bit immature in that respect, because he's a teenager and he should have known better. But I honestly, surely he would have had a bit more responsibility in that regard, and especially because the glasses were bequeathed to Peter. Tony gave the glasses to Peter. Peter should not have given the glasses to someone else that he doesn't really know that very well. And it's not helped when it's revealed that Quentin Beck as Mysterio happens to be a former associate of Tony Stark, and Quentin's plan in this film is to get revenge on Tony Stark, along with other people who have been disgruntled along by Tony Stark and his company. Which, again, I stressed that from the beginning it was established that Tony Stark was dead. Why are they doing this? Why are they getting their revenge on a dead man? And I mean, maybe I'm missing. Maybe it's because they want to get. Maybe it's their chance to get their own back on Tony because he's now dead. But I just felt, because I mean it annoys me, because the whole emphasis of these Spider-Man movies is that they should be Spider-Man movies. They shouldn't be MCU films with Spider-Man in them. I'm very thankful that No Way Home was made next after this one, because that film, for me, focused mostly on Spider-Man and the villains he had to fight against, and it was helped by the fact that two more Spider-Mans helped him out. Two more Spider-Men helped him out in the third outing that Tom Holland had, and I really struggle to, you know, take the Spider-Man Far From Home story seriously, and also they're still doing this thing where Peter, it has to be an Avenger, and it's not, and I really don't really get why they felt like they should have continued with that, because I mean, I know that was something that happened in the Avengers films, but you know, the point at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming was that he decided just to be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. He didn't want to be the Avenger anymore, and I think that was a thing that he kind of did in Far From Home. Like, he wanted to have his ordinary life, you know, have his life with you know, pursuing his relationship with Michelle, or MJ as some people would prefer to call her. You know, she you know, that he wanted to, you know, he wanted to find a way to be in a relationship with her, and it's like Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. were getting him to work for them for their own goals, because I mean, if Nick Fury and Shield were encouraging Peter to be more an Avenger than live his normal life, then they should have done it in a way that that wasn't patronizing or demeaning, because they were expecting too much of Peter, and they're doing this with a young man who's still in high school, and I just think the whole approach to it was a bit backward thinking, in my opinion, and I just don't get it. Why they decided to go with that approach. I mean, I get that it's to connect Spider-Man more to the MCU, but even with other superheroes in the MCU, they had their own stories going on, and they didn't need to rely on MCU elements barging their way in. I just feel like that was the point I feel like that was what was wrong with the first two MCU films with Spider-Man. There was like a lot of MCU elements barging their way in where they didn't need to make their appearance quite evident, because Peter could have just because the films could have just focused on Peter's character and his school trip, whilst having to contend with all the madness that was happening around him, and this leads on to an issue I have with Mysterio, because, as I said, Mysterio is revealed to be a former associate with Tony Stark, which was not in the original comics, because as I recall, Quentin Beck was a filmmaker, and he lost his job because he made a special effect that was too dangerous, and Spider-Man exposed him for that, and Quentin Beck was getting his revenge on Spidey. And he became Mysterio as a result of that, using his illusion technology. I really think that would have worked better as a story on its own, without all the MCU barging their way in. Like, Quentin Beck didn't need to have revenge on Tony Stark. He could have just had revenge on Spider-Man. Maybe Quentin Beck could have, as Mysterio, could follow Peter around on his school trip to get his revenge on Spidey because he ruined a special effect for him. Maybe Quentin Beck found out that Peter was Spider-Man, and he was being nice and friendly to him at first, not revealing to him that he was the guy who caused the disaster with the special effects film crew. Just something to make it not about Tony Stark. I know I'm not explaining myself as well as I could, but in terms of how I shared it in my review, but on my blog, but it just Spider-Man: Far From Home really frustrates me. And it's also frustrating for me in terms of the relationship between Peter and Michelle, because Peter's now interested in Michelle in this film, and I'm like, wait a minute, wasn't he interested in Liz from Spider-Man: Far Homecoming? Because in Spider-Man: Homecoming, Peter didn't share an interest in Michelle. And so why is he suddenly having this interest in Michelle all of a sudden in Far From Home? Again, it might be a teenage romance being told in this regard, compared to how the other Spider-Man movies have done romances. But I just wish that more thought had been put into the development of Michelle's character, in that Peter would have shown an interest in her, and we wouldn't have to be. It wouldn't be forced upon us that Peter was interested in Michelle in Far From Home, and it also, because the whole business of Michelle working out that Peter is Spider-Man, it just felt a bit flat for me, and I really wish that that had been developed gradually, rather than out of the blue. She worked it out by observing Peter. So yeah. I can't say that. I can't really say Spider-Man: Far From Home is a winner for me. People are bound to have different opinions on that in how the film is presented, but it's it just wasn't my kind of film that I wanted to see. So yeah, I'm really pleased No Way Home came along, because it at least restored my faith in Tom Holland as an actor playing Peter Parker as Spider-Man, because Tom Holland, he is very good as Peter Parker as Spider-Man. It's just the way the scripts are written for his character are rather badly handled, in my opinion. But then again, that's my opinion. I'm sure lots of people are bound to have different opinions on this film compared to me, and if you want to share them, if you want to share what you think of Spider-Man Far From Home, then by all means, if you love this film, great. Tell me why you love it, and if you didn't like the film as the same as me, then you're free to share that as well. So next week, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the third MCU Spider-Man film and the final one of the live-action film series, Spider-Man No Way Home, and that will be the extended edition on that. I know it's called the more fun version, but I prefer to call it the extended version. But I'm looking forward to No Way Home. That's my second favourite Spider-Man movie after Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire. So yeah, stay tuned. Hope you enjoyed my video on Far From Home, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care, everyone.